afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Natasha Killian. I'm the Resident Services Director here. That means I oversee independent living, and I am also a Wisconsin Certified Social Worker.
And I'm Erin Utterback, and I'm the social worker over in the health center.
So as social workers, our jobs require us to have a pretty solid understanding of the aging process and the various changes and challenges that people face as they get older. More importantly, our jobs revolve around identifying these potential challenges or changes with our residents and making sure they have the resources that they need to live as independently as possible. In a workplace as large as Capitol Lakes and with all the varying departments, we certainly recognize that not all of you come in here with the education and background related to the aging process and what is all involved with that. So we put together a bit of information that will hopefully give you some guidance and insight, since we all interact with our residents in different amounts and in different ways. So first, I would basically like to start out with an overview with a few major areas in which we might see changes and challenges with our residents in this working environment. And this is by no means an all-inclusive list, but rather some key areas that I think you'll notice some of these changes and challenges in. So first, related to physical changes, a decrease in strength, mobility, and balance. This can be both due to the natural effects of aging and disease-related symptoms. So some examples of that would be, over time, our cartilage surrounding our joints basically rubs away, and there can be problems with this that we have to deal with. So this would be a natural effect of aging. Parkinson's and Huntington's disease, there's shakiness. That's a symptom of those, which can lead to a decrease in balance and then possibly mobility. So this is a big area for us to be aware of because of the increased risk of falls amongst our residents. A fall for one of our residents could mean broken bones, hospitalization, weeks to months of therapy, or even death. So pay attention to your surroundings and know that our residents might require a little more time. A resident could be around the corner from you at any given time. They can feel rushed if you're walking behind them because we all probably walk at a faster pace than them. And also be aware of potential hazards that we can help fix. So for example, if the carpet is torn up in a particular area, put in a work order or have your supervisor put in a work order because that's fixable and it could potentially prevent a fall. Vision changes is another big area. So cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration, all of these eye diseases are really common as we age. And they can affect someone's ability to complete the simplest of tasks. So, for example, going to sit on a chair can result on falling on the floor instead. It can be impossible to read or write. Navigating across a room can seem like a daunting task. So some of our residents resort to isolating in their rooms because it's just too scary to get anywhere. And keep in mind, even if one of our residents has good memory and cognition, you may have to introduce yourself when speaking to them because they simply can't see you. And there are also a lot of adaptive devices that can be helpful for this. So let Erin or I know if you come across somebody that you think could use some type of a device that could be helpful, because this does exist and we can help them get hooked up with that type of resource. Hearing changes. I'm sure it's not news to any of you that hearing difficulty is also something many of our residents face. Not being able to hear or struggling to hear can be extremely isolating. So we can make the effort to recognize those residents who are hard of hearing and make a conscious effort to speak loudly and clearly when we talk to them. You don't necessarily have to speak at a super slow pace, but at a reasonable pace so that they can keep up. And possibly use different words or repeat yourself. And I know this is not always easy, but if you can go into a different room or a different space that's less noisy, that can be helpful too. Cognition changes. This is probably one of the biggest pieces people think of when we talk about the aging process. I'm sure you're all familiar with the term dementia, which I could talk for hours about alone. But again, the biggest concern here is being aware. There are a number of different types of dementia, Alzheimer's being the most common form. But regardless, know that dementia, generally speaking, can impact memory, intellect, personality, reasoning, and social skills. So taking into consideration that all of these areas can be affected, you might find yourself in the position where you don't agree with something a resident is telling you. For example, due to memory loss, you can get accused of doing something that you didn't do. It's frustrating, but remember that this is the environment that we work in, and we can't take these types of things personally because we're dealing with people that have a brain disease, and they're trying to make sense of not being able to remember something. So if you find yourself in a situation like this, let your supervisor know because it needs to be documented, and then maybe vent to a colleague because this happens to me all the time, and it's surely happened to some of you. And then just to mention, there is no cure for dementia. There are medications that can slow the progression. So again, this is a really big area that I just barely touched on, but just know that awareness is key. And then lastly, psychosocial changes. A lot of loss happens as we age, such as loss of family and friends, loss of independence, decreased social contacts, loss of sense of purpose. Many people have defined themselves by what they did in their careers, and they're not doing that anymore. So this is something that we need to recognize. And then a good example, in independent living, we have people moving in that have just left their homes that they've been in for 50, 60 years, and they've had to downsize their belongings to fit in the, an area the size of an apartment now. So that's a pretty big loss, and there's a pretty significant adjustment period that goes on when they move in. So Erin and I play a pretty large role in this, as well as Guta. So if you ever run into a resident that you feel like could benefit from some counseling or just somebody to listen to them, let us know, because we're happy to intervene. And there's also outside resources that we can tap into that could be useful as well. So like all the other changes I mentioned, be aware. And don't hesitate in letting one of us know if you think some intervention could be helpful, because you're not all in the position to do that yourself.
So not only does the aging process and transition affect residents, it also affects their families. Families are also working through the transition of their loved one to independent living, to assisted living, or the health center, which is a new environment, and they will require varying degrees of support from staff as well. So we as Capitol Lakes staff can help support those families by establishing a familiar environment for them and building rapport. It could be the front desk familiar person who says hello to them every morning. It could be the activities staff that incorporate families into the activities, the nurses and aides who explain what they're doing with the patients and answer any family questions. It's really just being aware that families are also needing a little bit of support during that time. Staff can always recommend families to meet with social services. Natasha or I or Guta is a good resource. And we can also help make referrals to the community. One of the big ones that we use the most over in the health center is the ADRC, which is the Aging and Disability Resource Center. They just provide free and unbiased information and assistance to residents and families that are going through the aging process. They can provide support with long-term care options and publicly funded programs. They also help with navigating benefits like Medicare and Medicaid, caregiver support, in-home personal care, meal programs, support groups, just a whole lot of things. And they're available to all Dane County residents regardless of income or personal resources. So again, see Natasha or I if you think a family or a resident could benefit from a referral to the ADRC.
So to wrap up our discussion of the aging process, I wanted to acknowledge the fact that our residents come to end of life here all the time. So a couple things to note on that. Hospice is a specialized support team that if the resident is enrolled, they step into their lives when life expectancy is 6 months or less. So you might not always recognize them when they're in our building, but just know that they provide a great level of wraparound care for our residents during this time, and they're a good supplement to what we're already doing here. Our residents sometimes go out to the inpatient unit at end of life or the hospital, but know that they do have the option to die at home. So whatever level of care they live at here, they do have that option. And what I find most important here is just know that at any given time, we might have a family member or a friend in our building because they're here to see their loved one that's close to end of life. So no matter what department you work in, you just might find yourself interacting with somebody that needs that smile or somebody to hold that elevator door for them, or to just have someone provide them with the high level of customer service that we should really be doing anyways.
As we all know, every resident has rights. Under federal law, all residents have the right to a dignified existence, self-determination, and communication with persons and services inside our facility as well as outside. The first one is dignity. All residents have the right to be treated as an individual with courtesy, respect, and dignity. That includes the right to be free from restraints, the right to reside and receive services in the facility that accommodate their needs, and residents also have the right to be free from financial, verbal, physical, and emotional abuse. Next is self-determination. That means that every resident has the right to make choices about aspects of their life in the facility that are significant to them. This includes choosing the activities they want to participate in, schedules like waking up, going to sleep, and health care that is consistent with their personal beliefs, interests, and plans of care. Each resident has the right to participate in the planning of their care and treatment. This also means the right to refuse it. As Capitol Lake staff, we have the responsibility to provide appropriate information so that the family and the resident can make an informed decision on their care. Even residents who have difficulty expressing themselves should have the opportunity to give input about their care and treatment. Residents also have the right to choose their own physicians and healthcare providers, both inside the facility and outside, and the right to change providers if they are not satisfied. And finally, residents have the right to manage their own finances. Next is information and communication. So residents have the right to be informed of their rights and of the rules and regulations of the facility. Residents have the right to access personal and medical records and the right to communicate with providers inside and outside the facility again. Residents also have the right to have the contact information and know how to file a grievance. And finally, residents have the right to privacy and a safe environment. They have the right to be cared for in a manner and in an environment that promotes maintenance as well as quality of life. Residents have the right to personal privacy and confidentiality of their personal and medical records, and they have the right to a safe, clean, and comfortable home-like environment.
So I just wanted to emphasize why the resident rights that Erin just went through are so important. So first of all, it's the law. We actually have to uphold these rights for our residents. It's part of what allows our facility to function. And we do have the state that comes in here to make sure we're doing it and that residents have the right to speak up if it isn't happening, because we can certainly get into a lot of trouble for that. Secondly, many of our residents, due to various barriers, have trouble expressing themselves and advocating for themselves the way that you or I can, or the way that they once used to be able to. So seeing that we work in their home, we should all be their advocates, and we can ensure that they are being treated with the dignity and respect that they should be. And we can only do that if we know what these resident rights are. And then lastly, if our residents are being treated with dignity and respect and everything else that Erin mentioned, my opinion is that they will hopefully be happier people, and in happier residents hopefully means happier staff.
So if you see a resident's rights being violated, same as Mary Rita said, the first thing you would do is make sure the resident is okay and safe. And then after that, reporting that violation. That includes abuse and neglect to your supervisor or social services as soon as you can. Supervisors and social services then have their own investigation and reporting requirements to protect the resident and their rights. Residents also have the right to voice their own grievances if they feel that their rights are being violated. They have the right to do that without fear of discrimination or punishment. So as staff, you can advocate and support residents who want to voice that grievance, and you can direct them to Natasha or I, who can help them fill out a grievance or complaint and then work with the resident to get that resolved. Residents and families also can talk to the ombudsman. They respond to complaints and problems that residents have. They will investigate and resolve those problems, provide information, and can also make referrals to residents and families in the community. They also help residents and families with concerns about facility resident rights, abuse and neglect, privacy and confidentiality, and how to go about finding community-based services. So as always, staff or residents can always ask Natasha or I how to utilize any of these resources or services.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
I think we're going to take a stretch break, bathroom break, water break, so go ahead. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Peggy Backenstead, and I'm the supervisor of medical records and then the health unit desks at the health center. I'm going to talk to you today about HIPAA, which HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. I know that probably doesn't mean a whole lot to anybody. It is kind of a complicated thing, but I'll go ahead and just give you a brief definition of what HIPAA is and kind of narrow it down to more what we deal with. So HIPAA is a bill passed by the federal government in 1996 to improve portability and continuity of health insurance coverage, to combat waste and fraud, to improve access to long-term care services, and to simplify the administration of health insurance. Additionally, additional rules were thereafter passed that require healthcare providers, including Capitol Lakes Health Center and Terraces, along with healthcare plans, which would include our employer-sponsored group plan, to safeguard the privacy and security of protected health information. So protected health information is also known as PHI, and that's the part that we play a part in. PHI, it basically is any information in print, spoken, or electronic format that can be used to identify an individual, whether living or deceased, and relating to the person's past, present, or future physical or mental health condition, including information about services they receive and the payment for those services. So why should we care? Each Capitol Lakes employee really plays a critical role in protecting this information to some degree. Some of us get more involved in it, but all of us do have the ability to help in the whole process of protecting information for our residents. Our residents deserve to have the information they entrust to us safeguarded and kept confidential. We are required by law to do so, and in some cases, criminal and civil penalties can occur if found in violation of HIPAA policies. Following HIPAA guidelines for protecting PHI sensitive information is a job requirement for each and every one of us and can result in sanctions if not adhered to, so it is very important. Some examples of PHI or sensitive information are listed here, but most of us, these examples of PHI and sensitive information that Capitol Lakes staff are required to protect. Some of these alone may not seem like a breach of privacy, but can identify a person if referenced in conversation or on documents that include medical detail about a person. And of course, safeguarding social security number and personal account numbers protect against identity and financial theft. So PHI would include things such as your name, address, social security number, a birth date, date of death, admission date, discharge date, phone numbers, fax numbers, computer identifying information such as a URL, which identifies a web page, and an IP address that identifies a computer. Personal accounts such as license, medical record, health plan, financial accounts, debit and credit card accounts, medical device identification numbers, vehicle identification numbers, biometric identification such as finger or voice prints, full face photos, and any other unique identifying information that alone or in combination with other publicly available information would identify an individual. Personal information, including HR benefits information and payroll identifiers, are also PHI. Residents do have, it is permissible for Capitol Lakes to use and share PHI with other healthcare providers for treatment payment and healthcare operations without authorization from a resident. Examples of that would be for continuity of care purposes. So that would be sharing information with the hospitals, maybe a primary care provider, orthopedic doctor, anybody that is going to continue the care for that person, even another facility that they may be discharging to. We can share without having the resident give us written approval. You can also share with insurance companies, long-term health insurance, Medicare, to get the payments made without having the resident authorize you to be able to do that. And then we do have to share information with business associates to perform their services. An example of that would be our shredding company. They are able to go ahead and take the information off-site and shred it. We don't have to get or written approval from the residents. It's just part of their business associate agreement with us. They have to protect in the same way we do. Residents also have the right to see and obtain a copy of their own health record without written authorization or request. In most other cases of disclosure, proper written authorization is required to release copies of health information containing PHI. Not everybody deals with that, and any of the departments that do, I will be providing more detail one-on-one with the departments on that. But if anybody does encounter and has any questions, please just check with either myself or somebody in the medical records department. HIPAA also has a minimum necessity requirement. What that means is Capital Lakes is required to take reasonable steps to limit the use or disclosure of PHI to the minimum necessary to accomplish its intended purposes. So what that means for us is, one, accessing your computers is limited based on what your job functions are. You should be viewing only whatever it takes to accomplish the job tasks that you have, and nothing more, just enough to get the job done. Avoid accessing a person's record just to satisfy your curiosity. You should only be looking at a record if you have the need to do so to perform your job. Only access records of people you know personally when you need to know the information to complete your job tasks. And then refrain from asking about or sharing specific identifiable information with coworkers unless you are collaborating on the care of that person. Some guidelines and tips to help you to abide by HIPAA and then also Capital Lakes information, privacy, and security requirements. These tips, some of them may not apply to you, especially if you don't use a computer to do your job, but the first number of them really does apply to everybody that works here. So PHI and sensitive information should be shared only when a person has the legal right to know. Discussions that include PHI and sensitive information should take place in private and for job-related reasons only. This especially includes phone conversations. You really need to be careful not to be overheard when you're on the phone talking about a resident. When a resident is asked for by name, a staff member may disclose the room number unless the resident has requested to remain private. And then protecting written documentation and electronic transmission or storage of PHI is a little bit trickier. PHI and sensitive information should, again, be shared only when the person has the legal right to know. Documents should not be left in an unintended public area for anybody to see. Retrieve documents from network printers, copy machines, fax machines as soon as possible. And one suggestion for that is if you are printing to the large copy machines that you use this secure print function, you can go ahead and set up your print job and then it doesn't release from the printer until you go down and put in a code to release it. So that's highly recommended if you are printing anything that does have critical information on it. Paper documents containing PHI sensitive information should be shredded and placed in the locked shred bins found throughout the facility. And each area, Terraces has them, the health center has a number of them, and then also Independent Living, I know, has at least one in the library. So they're throughout the facility, and you can go ahead and put your shred documents in there. Residents, visitors, and vendors should not have access to areas where PHI or sensitive information can be viewed. So example of that would be you should not have residents or visitors in the nurse's station, behind a receptionist's desk, anywhere that information is out because you're doing your job there. They should not be in those areas and within view of those documents. Passwords are required for specific system access, and we should never ever share our unique login IDs or passwords with anybody, including your IT people or your supervisor. Use encryption and confidentiality disclosure statements for all emails that contain PHI or sensitive information being delivered to anybody that has an email address that ends with something other than @retirement.org. To encrypt, you just use the square brackets with the word encrypt inside it, and that can be in the subject line or the body of the email. And then the email passes through the internet encrypted, and on the other end, the recipient is asked to put in a password to decode the encryption. One problem with that is that you could, if you use a wrong email address, the person at the other end will be able to unencrypt that message, so you have to be really careful about the email addresses that you're using when you're sending outside of Capital Lakes. Do not store PHI or sensitive information on your smartphones, your cell phones, mobile devices, unless you are authorized to do so by PRS or IT, and that would be a work phone or equipment that they would have handed out to you. Data storage devices, including thumb drive, flash drive, memory cards, external hard drives, must be encrypted, and IT can help you with doing that. Do not email or download files containing PHI to a personal computer, personal device, or your personal email address. And then if you are on a computer and you leave your workstation and it does have PHI information or critical information on it, you should always have that screen go dark. So one way of doing that is to use the Control-Alt-Delete and then select lock this computer, or shortcut is to use the button that has the window symbol plus the L key, and then to turn it back on you just toggle and do the same thing again, the window button and the L. Be sure to log off your workstations at the end of the day. Protect computer equipment and mobile devices from theft and loss, and if you did use a company issued piece of equipment, you would need to notify the help desk immediately because they have steps to take to kind of shut that equipment down. PHI or sensitive information should be accessed only using the PSI private Wi-Fi network, never over the public. There is not enough protection in place to be sharing that type of information over that Wi-Fi service. And then disks, tapes, hard drives, flash drives, memory cards, cell phones must be physically destroyed by professionals in the IT department. We cannot just throw those in the trash. And some suggestions for setting up your work area to make sure that information is protected, especially if you have visitors to your office or around your area. You should lock your office and file cabinets if you have documents that contain PHI or sensitive information when you are not in the office. You should keep your temporary shred container, which is the bin that looks like a garbage can. That should be out of visitor sites if you have people in your office frequently. Position your computer screen in a way that it is not directly visible to visitors, or if you're not able to do that, make sure you're using that locking function or the screen shutdown function. Whenever possible, keep documents with PHI or sensitive information in file drawers, but if you do have information on top of your desk and you have visitors in, you should try to put it in folders so that it is not viewable. And then do not leave documents laying around in nurses' stations, on top of med carts, in the touchscreen kiosk areas, or in public areas around the receptionist's desk. So maybe some examples of HIPAA-related incidents that you might encounter throughout your day that should either be addressed or reported. Emails, say you sent an email that went out that should have been encrypted. That really does need to be reported. We do have some reports that we have to do to our corporate office for incidents of that type of thing, and so that should be reported either to your supervisor or the privacy officer, which is me. Fax messages that are sent to an incorrect fax number, but it's still a working fax number, those should be also reported. Inappropriate discussions or gossiping about a resident's health, including discussions about a resident care in a public location. I think those are things that we can, as coworkers, remind each other of. When you overhear that, just kind of remind people that those are private conversations, and I think that is helpful just to work together. Reviewing a resident or staff member's record without a legitimate work-related reason to do so should be avoided. Texts or information posted on social media by a workforce member about a resident or containing PHI-sensitive information, that should definitely be reported. And then taking pictures of residents with a personal camera or a phone. And I do have a little bit of information from a brochure that was just distributed or published by Wisconsin Health Services regarding photos and cameras on your phone. Posting a photo or video to Facebook that includes personal and identifying characteristics of a resident is an example of a potential caregiver misconduct or violation of a resident's right. Along with sending or posting a photo on Snapchat or Instagram that include any parts of a resident's body. Having an image or a video of a resident on your Snapchat storage or on your camera storage without the resident's written consent or knowledge, all of those should be definitely avoided. And basically, you should just keep your cell phones locked up and off your person while you're at work, just to avoid all of that. You may also see written material with PHI sensitive information found in the trash that really should have been shredded, and that should be pulled and have somebody made aware of it. Written material with PHI sensitive information left in public place or visitable to unauthorized persons should be removed. Unauthorized password sharing and use should be reported, and then suspicious email messages, when you get them, or just watch for them, remember never to open an attachment or click a link unless you are certain of who the sender was. So basically, to sum it up, it kind of falls under the if you see something, say something. All workforce members are responsible for reporting situations that are contrary to PRS or Capital Lakes policies. This includes suspected incidents involving the security and privacy of PHI and sensitive information. If you have any questions or concerns or need assistance in what to do about an incident or to report it, talk to your supervisor, the facility privacy officer, again, me, executive director, or human resources. All of us should be able to help you. For anonymous reporting, if you choose to do it that way, you can contact Ethics Point. The phone number and the website are posted by the HR reception area if you do need to reference that information. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions? Nope. Okay. Well, thank you.
outdated, but we've had these books for so long that they don't wear much because they're pretty durable. But eventually those books will go away. We'll update them. There are some that are on order and stuff to meet the needs of the departments and stuff like that. So, but it's supposed to contain, you know, the program in there, the safety data sheets in there, and how to read them and all that kind of thing. So hopefully, if you've got questions, sit down with your supervisors for a few minutes just to understand how to read them, how to know where to look for first aid, that kind of thing. You saw the slide up here that Justin had on there about filling out an incident report, so you want to make sure that
pence to a gallon